I was like, oh, my kid is so careful and cautious. I have clearly parented them so well. And then, my middle kiddo was born and put me in my place.
Raising a well-behaved child in this world requires strict discipline and punishment. Today, we will look...
No, we will not.
Hello and welcome to Childproof. I'm Gwen Lathland.
And I'm Tori Phantom, and I have anxiety.
That is a bold way to start an episode, Tori.
Yeah, I know. I have anxiety and am anxious about doing an episode about anxiety, even though it was my idea. But I'm going to do it anxious because lots of folks have to do lots of things with anxiety while anxious, including parenting, including me.
Let's anxiously talk about anxiety and anxiousness. But first, let's start the timer. Okay, so when you first pitched this episode, I was like, yeah. And then back behind the scenes, no one asked for. We use shared notes to plan our episodes. Yeah. So we'll go back and forth, adding little, sometimes nonsensical words, but it's meant to remind me of what I was going to talk about. And then you'll add your stuff. And so I was like, okay, so I wrote down 4 things and I was very proud of myself. And then I left the note. And when I came back to the note, Tori had added their stuff to it. And it was 7 pages long. And that was the moment at which I realized I don't suffer from anxiety disorder. I just have regular person anxiety.
Show off.
I think those things are different. Like I've always been aware those
rub
are
it
different.
in, okay.
I don't have an anxiety disorder diagnosed, but I don't think I realized the disparity between my human levels of anxiety and being anxious about things and someone who copes with that on a regular, like that's your life.
Yeah.
I get anxious. You are anxious. There's a difference.
Yes. And honestly, that's one of the reasons that I wanted to do this episode is because I feel like a lot of our listeners probably align with how I experience the world and how you do. And I think it can help us to like understand each other more and kind of to discuss how we are navigating these things because kids get anxiety too, right?
Right.
And you can be anxious. You can have anxiety and not be suffering from an anxiety disorder.
Right.
And I think that line can get kind of tricky for people.
Yeah.
And that not all anxiety is bad, right?
No, absolutely not. That is something that from my non-anxiety position, I routinely try to tell my kids, it's okay to be scared. It's absolutely fine to be scared. There are good reasons to be scared. Recently, we live out in the country and we have bobcats. Have you ever heard of bobcat?
Yeah, I grew up in a mountain in the woods.
Yeah, that's true. So yeah. So for the listeners who've maybe never heard of bobcat, I'm going to find a clip of a bobcat and we're going to play it right here. That was a bobcat. That was
it's horrifying. It's horrifying.
It sounds like a woman screaming. And then when you add it to the reverb of the trees, or if you live in a mountainous area, it's awful. And my daughter is terrified of that sound.
Yeah.
And her room is in the back of the house closest to the woods. So she hears it more acutely. And then because it frightens her, there's a little level of anxiety that's always making her listen for those, especially as the sun goes down and the bobcats are most vocal. And she didn't want to go in her room for bed one time because now we've done the time change and it's broad fucking daylight when I have to lay my children down for
hung
bed.
up 2 layers of curtains in my kids' room so that their bedroom is dark now.
But she didn't want to go in her bedroom. And I was like, why? She was like, I'm scared of the bobcats. I was like, it's okay to be scared of the bobcats. We have walls. They're big kittens, and they really are not interested in coming into our house. In fact, they don't like that our house is here. They avoid it entirely. She goes, I feel silly. Why do you feel silly? Because I'm scared. Oh no, baby. I need you to remain scared of bobcats.
Yes,
okay?
we want to. If you are outside and you hear that, get inside.
Get
That's
inside.
that is a signal. There is a reason that your body is having that response.
Correct.
And you are safe inside.
Yes. So, no. I want you to be scared of bobcats. If it starts to wander into, I can't even go into my room because it's scary and the bobcat might scream. Okay, we've taken it from this is a healthy way to keep ourselves safe. We've now made it an anxiety and we need to have a different conversation. I want you to be scared of the bobcats. I don't want you to be anxious it's going to scream while you're in your room.
Yes. And I think the way that we navigate talking about anxiety with our kids is important. And as someone who has PTSD and generalized anxiety disorder, it is important to me that my kids know that I struggle with things. However, they don't need to know all of the specifics, right? And of course, there's age appropriate stuff. And I'm never like, it would be, I would say it would be a cruel parenting move for me to tell my kids why I have PTSD. It's like, yeah, the things I've been through, you don't know. You don't need to know that, right?
Let's just go ahead and preemptively hit the trauma button.
Trauma door.
It's funny every time. But I think it is important to not, I mean, we've talked about this recently, I think, to show our kids that we are full humans with a full range of emotions and that things like this happen. And so my kids have heard me say, like, I'm just feeling really anxious right now. How do I define that to a young child, right? Like, how do you define that to a kid? So the way that I describe anxiety to my kids is anxiety is like feeling really afraid when there's nothing to be afraid of.
Okay.
And is that fully
so the
accurate?
bobcat screaming in the bedroom. There's nothing to be scared of. Is it a weird sound? Yeah. But it's not a danger to us.
Yes. And so is it completely accurate? No. But that's where that idea starts. Like that is where that conversation can start. And when I notice my kids are being feeling anxious about something, here's the thing for my fellow anxious parents. If you feel some sort of shame or guilt because you have anxiety in your, because I don't know, I've experienced this and no one has ever had a unique experience, so I'm sure someone else has. I used to feel like kind of this shame of like, I wish I wasn't like this. Am I going to mess my kids up? Are they going to end up like this too? Like I was anxious about causing my kids to have anxiety, like, you know, normal things.
Very anxiously meta.
Yes. And what I realized, though, is like, number one, kids, or there is a genetic predisposition to having anxiety. And that doesn't mean if your kid has anxiety that they are going to develop an anxiety disorder, right? Some people just have higher levels of anxiety.
Correct.
And so what I realized is I have nothing to be ashamed of. I have nothing to feel bad about with this, because when my kids experience anxiety, I am the perfect person to help them navigate it.
Yeah.
Because I have a lifetime of experience learning
I have good ways
cope.
to do it. I have bad ways to do it. I have, this isn't the best, but it's going to work for now, buddy.
Yes. And part of that too is, you know, I have been in and out of therapy for 15 years, but I really dedicated myself to working on feeling better probably over the last 5 years or so. And it has made such a dramatic difference in my life. And Gwenna can attest to that.
Yes,
it's
absolutely. The beginning of our friendship, anxiety Tori, versus the now of our friendship, anxiety Tori, are two completely different people. There are similarities between them, but
I'm a lot, I navigate it all a lot better. And with that, and all of that therapy and everything that I've done, I have so many tools to help my kids. And that's one of the things that we say in our house. It's like a mantra, is anxiety is a liar, right? Because if we're worried about something, well, there's probably a reason to be worried, right?
Yeah.
I'm worried about this test, or I'm worried about this. That's totally expected, right?
Well, but there's also nervous. I'm nervous about the first time I'm doing something. I'm nervous about this experience that I really don't have any reference on.
Yeah. And so when we notice that anxiety, right? That kind of, this is a bigger reaction than you would expect for this thing, or we're just feeling anxious. Well, anxiety is a liar. If anxiety is telling you that you're going to go to school on pajama day and no one else is going to be in pajamas, and now we're like, I don't know if you've ever experienced this as someone who hasn't dealt with anxiety, Gwenna, but Spirit days when I was in school, I was always terrified that I had the day wrong. I would
I was the kind of kid who didn't participate in those because those were lame. I do not believe that now.
Yeah.
And I will dress up like a dumb idiot just for funsies.
Just for fun. Yeah, you have a turkey costume, I believe.
But here's the thing is that is a different flavor of anxiety. You were scared you had the wrong day. I was scared to participate at all. Because what if they teased me? What if they made fun of me?
That
what
was
if
part
my
of it
costume
too.
wasn't good?
Yeah, that was part of it too for me. And you said like with the bobcats things, right? So to give an example of like how I handle it, right? Because I think like phobias, like being afraid of the dark, it's kind of walks the line with anxiety. But it's not the same.
I'm going to do the millennial thing. I'm going to put a pin on phobias because I want you to say what you're going to say, but then I want to return to phobias.
Okay. Yeah. Because I think, those things are connected. Like the phobia is making you anxious, right?
Right.
And so one of my kids had started, I feel like it's in that 6 to 8 age range. That's when that real fear of the dark happens.
Yeah.
And so one of my kids had started to be afraid of the dark. And it was causing a lot of anxiety. I don't want the light off. We have night lights and stuff. I actually have a Bob Ross clapper nightlight. It's pretty cool.
Love it.
And
we'll link that in the show description.
Yeah. And so it was, I don't want the door closed. And I'm sitting here like, I have anxiety because you close before you doze, my dude.
Yeah.
And so what I did is, and this is a big one for me when my kid is experiencing anxiety, is why are you feeling this way? Well, I don't know. I'm just feeling this way. Yes. But you're the only one who can know. So let's unpack it. Let's get to the root of this. Or what do you think is going to happen? Let's get through this and process it, right? And
I
so
get that you don't know. Let's figure it out.
Yeah. And so it was, I don't know what everything looks like. I can't tell what's going on in the dark. And I'm like, okay, cool. Here's what we're going to do. I turn the light on and we stood there. Or my kid was in bed. I'm standing there by the light. I turn the light on. I said, look around. You see everything? Yeah. Okay, I'm going to turn the light off now. And I turn the light off. And they're like, I don't like the dark. I don't like the dark. I said, hang on. Let your eyes adjust. Look around. You still see stuff? Yeah, it's just not as well. Okay, cool. You're scared? Uh-huh. All right. I'm going to turn the light on now. And I turn the light back on.
Yeah.
Has anything changed?
Yeah.
No. Okay, let's do it again.
Yeah.
And we did it like 2 or 3 times. And by the end of this, like my kid is laughing and like, oh, okay, did that mean that the fear was completely gone? No, but it helped enough that they could relax. And sometimes that's what we're trying to do, especially when we're talking about anxiety. Like if someone's like, well, why are you anxious about that? You have nothing to be anxious about. Like, thanks, I'm cured. It's not helpful.
Here's the thing about anxiety is most of the time, it's stupid.
Oh,
there's a low level part of you that knows this is a dumb thing to worry about, but it doesn't stop you from worrying about it.
And because you can't reason your way out of anxiety, it's a different part of your brain that's being turned on. I've read the science behind how all this works. It's me.
Listen, I'm going to confess, I may have handled it just a little bit differently. But first, I'm going to describe how I handled my child telling me I'm afraid of the dark.
Okay.
And then I'm going to explain why it's important that what I did was just as correct as what Tori did. My child walks out and she goes, Mom, can we get a nightlight for my room? I don't know. Why do you want a nightlight? I'm scared of the dark. No, you're not. Oh, okay. The reason this is a valid thing is because we are the experts on our own child. I had enough context to know my child actually does very poorly with any amount of light. I know this because the time change messes with her every time. We've stopped short of putting foil on the windows. We have black paint on the edges of her windows to prevent light bleed from around the multiple layers of curtains we've got. So she doesn't do well with light in her sleeping environment.
Her I'm afraid of the dark was just, I don't want to be in bed. Can I have some water?
Pretty much. Well, and she had also watched a semi-scary movie wherein one of the children, Their big thing was they were scared of the dark, and they overcame that. It was just one of those silly after school specials. I knew where she got all that information. And so my reaction, I'm scared of the dark. No, you're not.
Do you know, this is going to make you laugh. I don't think I've ever told you this. We have this ongoing joke in my house. Okay. When a kid gets afraid of something, the question is, I will ask, am I afraid? Am I worried about that?
Mm-hmm.
And it's no, right? And the joke is that I am the gauge of anxiety. If I'm not afraid, you have no reason to be. And I'm afraid of everything.
Look, is mom flipping out?
Yeah.
Okay, mom flips out over stupid shit, so you have no cause.
Yes. If I'm not worried, you don't have to be. If you do need to be worried, I will tell you.
Yeah.
I am the compass of anxiety in the house. I will point you in the right way.
So I want to swing back to phobias really quick, because phobias are different than anxieties. They are just as irrational many times. Sometimes phobias develop because something horrible happened to you, but
and phobias make you feel anxiety.
Yes.
That's
so they are a separate entity, and they can be all consuming, and there's very little you can do about it outside a therapeutic setting. Sometimes you can therapize yourself to handling phobias. It doesn't make you not phobic.
Yeah.
You're still phobic of the thing.
You should see me near a spider.
So we're going to talk about that. My mom has and had, when I was a child, arachnophobia. Horrible panic attack at the presence of a spider. We live in Oklahoma. We have lots of spiders everywhere all the time. We're not like Australian levels, but like just lots. My mom, horribly arachnophobic. She would scream. She would have a freeze response. She would have a panic response, which meant, since I grew up in a single mom home, if there was a spider, guess who had to fucking deal with it? Because my mom's phobia meant she literally couldn't. So folks, I need you to know, I grew up with my mom horribly arachnophobic. Do I like spiders? No, not particularly. If I don't have to deal with them, I won't deal with them.
I just don't understand why something so small has so many legs.
I do not have a phobia of spiders. Listen to me, all of you who have phobias. I grew up in an incredibly arachnophobic house. I do not have a phobia of spiders. I don't like spiders, but I am not terrorized by them. Will I make someone else deal with a spider if I don't have to? Yes, absolutely. But if I'm the only one in the house, I don't have a phobia of spiders. Phobias aren't necessarily passed down just because your kids observed you having them. I have emetophobia. My family knows this. My littles are just now learning this. We don't tell mom.
We'll define that really quick. That is the fear of throwing up.
Yeah.
Seeing it, experiencing it.
Yeah.
Yes.
I have that. My kids now know, don't tell mom I feel like I'm going to throw up. Either go do it where you need to do it, or tell dad if you think an adult needs to know, because mom will be unhelpful about this.
Yeah. Okay. So question though, with the emetophobia, right? Like that is going to cause a huge reaction. That is an anxiety response that you're having to it, right? So how do you handle, and I know that you have far less of the regular anxious experience, when you are feeling anxious, when you are experiencing anxiety, how do you continue to parent? Like, how do you parent through that?
A lot of times I have to go straight into smallest possible contribution. Sometimes I have to convince myself, just take one step toward the bathroom where you can hear them retching. You have not thrown up yet, so you are okay. Take a second step to the bathroom where you can hear them retching. You have not thrown up yet, so you are okay. Now, this is happening very rapidly, kind of. Like, would it just be walking down the hall speed? No. It looks a little bit like I'm moving in slow motion, but the more steps I force myself to take, the more times I grab the door handle. I'm sorry. For those of you who are only listening on audio, Tori is getting into a fight with her bangs.
Because it's too long now, and I just put my eyelashes on before we started recording, and so when my hair falls, it sticks to my eyelashes, and I can just feel it. So
anyway, if you want to watch Tori get into a fight with their bangs every episode, you should follow us on YouTube. Childproof Podcast.
It's just like the little hairs are starting. Okay, we're good. Continue.
So yeah, a lot of times it's breaking it down, and every time I make myself complete a step, it's just a tiny bit easier for me, and that is wholly my experience with it. But every time I force myself to get a little closer, it's just a little easier to force myself to go a little closer. And also for me specifically, because my particular phobia that triggers the anxiety is something that's just sort of intrinsic in being a parent. Someone's going to puke on you multiple times when you're a parent. I get sort of that balance of, yes, I am incredibly anxious about this. I feel sick to my stomach and I am having an incredibly sympathetic nervous response to this. It is difficult to maintain. But also I've got the adrenaline and parental instinct kicking in. Like, I have to handle this because this isn't just a random person yakking it up. This is my kid and I need to help this.
Yeah. I am thankful that that's one that that doesn't bother me. Like, I've caught it in my hands. Okay. Like,
nope.
yeah.
Nope. Topic change now. We found Gwen's line. It was right there about 20 seconds ago. Go back to messing with your bangs, Tori.
I think that's a really great tool, is just like, we're going to baby step it. I think that's a great way to do it.
I was going to say, I say with all love, care, and respect, with way more experience, how do you force yourself through an anxiety moment because your kids fucking need you?
Yeah. So I would say, honestly, I don't have to force myself through it because it's so regular for me that it's kind of, I just have ways that I kind of navigate it. It's when it kind of, when I'm having a very bad anxiety day, that's where it can get tricky. Or if something like triggers this anxious response where it's like, oh, okay, no, don't want to have a panic attack. I need to do something to take care of myself. And so one thing that is actually like really important to me, I have a few people in my life that because when you have debilitating anxiety, when you have an anxiety disorder, it is pretty easy to sort through. Sometimes it's hard. And this is, of course, my experience. Sometimes it's pretty easy to tell this is a rational anxiety, and I can kind of like work through that on my own. Like, it makes sense that this is making me anxious. And sometimes I'm like, this is so annoying. This thing that I am anxious about is so irrational. Like,
I've gotten texts from you.
Yes.
Hey, will you remind me that this is stupid, because I know it's stupid, but I need someone else to tell me that it's stupid.
This is a thing that I will do because my logic brain, the logic in my brain is telling me, like, and I know it to be true, but what happens is it's a cognitive dissonance that's happening because the anxious part of my brain is like, I don't care that you know it's true. I said anxiety. And I'm like, yeah, I hear you. But by talking to someone else who I know is not in the level of anxiety I am, who isn't having this argument in their brain, they are okay. It is weirdly helpful to hear from an external source that I trust. Yeah, you're right. Like, this isn't anything to be anxious about. And like, I have a friend who's been my friend for 15 years and no, you're right. This isn't anything to be anxious about. And here's why. And it's everything I already knew, but to also hear that from someone else, it's kind of grounding in a way of like, I need to get out of my head. I need to connect with someone. And that is really helpful.
You haven't done it in the past couple years, but when we were first friends, you were still pretty fresh to tornadoes. So I have lived in Tornado Alley my entire life. That's just been a regular part of my experience. And in the early years of our friendship, you would routinely text me, I see that the weather guy says this is going to miss me. I see that the danger avocado is not even over me, but I cannot release the fact that maybe a tornado is going to eat my entire family and that the stove will explode. Will you tell me?
I did not say it that calmly, but yeah. I like that you made it seem like I was so reasonable. Thank you.
Will you tell me that everything that I'm seeing is correct? Will you take a look and see if you see the same thing that I have already looked at a billion times? Yeah, I'll take a look.
Yeah.
So do I have 2 different weather apps on my phone? Yes. Have I needed the second one for like 2 years? No. But I downloaded the weather app near Tori's living location so I could look at their radars and go, oh yeah, you're not going to get anything. It's going to skip you entirely.
We do now and then still look at each other's weather just
We
because
do, but
if we
it's
know,
not to calm anxiety. It's
yeah,
just because, hey, what's going on in yours?
Yeah, if you're taking cover right now, you can't text me. I'll just look. I know where you are. And for those of you who don't know, Danger Avocado is a term I coined years ago when I moved here because few things about me. I can make anything funny because funny makes me feel better. And also, you know, it helped me with this anxiety. So if you look at a severe weather map that they put the layers of like the severe risk and outside of that is the marginal and it goes on. But the colors that they choose to use, it looks like an avocado.
Almost
and
every
so
time.
You don't want to be in the pit of the avocado. And if you are, your goal is to not end up with guacamole. That's what it is. Okay. So we just call it the Danger Avocado now. We just text each other. I have a Danger Avocado today.
Again, if you're listening to this on Spotify, Apple, or any of the listening only platforms, although are we on video on Spotify?
We're on
now?
video on Spotify.
Okay.
For
But
like
if you're listening to this on
3 weeks
Apple
now.
or any of the places that you don't get video, please swap over to either Spotify where you can see our faces or YouTube where you can see our faces, because we have put up graphics to explain the Danger Avocado.
Yes.
So if you're only listening to this and you're like, why are you talking about things we can't see? It's because we also have video. I'm super sorry. We'll try to stop doing that, but we're
probably not
going
to stop doing that. But here's the other thing. The reason that you haven't gotten as much anxiety text, I mean, in years you haven't gotten any about the tornadoes, right? I've lived here for 8 years, and one thing I know about myself is that when I learn about the thing that is making me scared, I now have less fear, because that is a big thing for my personal anxiety is when I don't understand how something works, my brain will come up with a story and try to figure it out. And my brain is a horror writer. Okay. Stephen King, move over. So when I can learn things,
My brain is a horror writer needs to be on a t-shirt.
we should make t-shirts.
We should make t-shirts. Oh, hey, you lost the game.
Dang it. Anyway, what I did is I basically taught myself meteorology. And now I know about the C curve, and I know about all the different types of clouds that can look like tornadoes, but aren't tornadoes. I know what a scud is. That one makes me laugh because you call it a scud. But by doing so, we have now reached a point, Gwen, you will be so proud of me. A couple weeks ago, the tornado siren went off.
Did you go out on your porch?
It was 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. Tornado siren went off. Okay.
Yeah.
My kids enter my room. Mom, tornado siren's going off. I felt annoyed. I wasn't scared. I said, hang on. I picked my phone up and went to my weather app and I said, it's not near us. You can go back to bed or you can go downstairs if you don't like the sound of it. Like we have during tornado season, I have a air mattress set up in my basement. Yeah. It's a finished basement so that if we are going to have tornadic weather at night, we could just like have a sleepover downstairs.
Just hang there. Yeah.
And I was like, you guys can go downstairs if you want. You can go back to bed. This is not anywhere near us. We're fine. And I put a pillow over my head to go back to sleep with the siren going off. So that's how far I've made it with that.
Yes, you are now one of us. I do not think you can claim storm anxiety anymore. Yeah. Now, if you experience anxiety, it is a normal amount of anxiety that is the protective kind.
Yeah.
Because there's actual danger, not your brain lying to you about it.
The storms were rolling in. The sirens are going off. I was in the middle of cooking biscuits and gravy. I'm looking out the window. I'm like, I don't see a tornado. I'm finishing.
Fuck you.
I want this. I've never felt more Southern, cursing out a tornado while making biscuits and gravy.
Okay, so I do want to take just the anxiety comes in many flavors. It feels different for different people. There are definitely similarities, but how you deal with it is going to be very different. Except there is one particular group of people who every time the response needs to be the same. If you have recently given birth, delivered yourself of, or had a child inside you and it is no longer inside you. I'm choosing my words very carefully. If you were pregnant and are no longer pregnant, and you are experiencing anxiety and you weren't a particularly anxious person before, I want you to go talk to your physician.
Please.
That could be postpartum anxiety, and postpartum anxiety is a completely different flavor of anxiety.
Very bad postpartum anxiety with my second. Yeah. And because I was already such an anxious person. I kept dismissing that in myself. And that was probably one of the hardest years for me because it's a different beast and it's so much more intense.
It's a different beast, and it's so easy to spin into a whole bunch of different things. You can get postpartum rage from postpartum anxiety that's not being handled or addressed or acknowledged. I dealt with postpartum depression, and I've never had depression like that. And I've been depressed. I've been depressed.
Oh, fun story. You just heard Gwenna censor herself.
I did.
So we're doing a new bit. We're gonna have a cuss count for Gwenna.
Listen, the platforms that show our podcast to people don't like it when I curse as much as I do. So now I have to be a good girl.
If we have to put an explicit marker on our episodes, it immediately makes it so that our distribution drops and we can't get
played it because Gwenna said too many curse words,
and we can't even get played in a lot of countries if we have to put on that label. So.
So anyway, drop in the comments what my curse count was for this one. I think if we exceed 10,
I think we should come up with our own replacement curses. That's going to be what we're going to do. Maybe we'll do a game next week with what we've come up with.
But yeah, if you were pregnant and are no longer pregnant and you are experiencing anxiety, worry, concern, fixating on the worst or weirdest things, I want you to go talk to your doctor. Any doctor. Your OBGYN should be your first stop, but your general practitioner, just walk into an urgent care and say, I just had a baby and I can't stop thinking about this awful thing. They will understand and connect you with resources.
And I want to remind all of you, you deserve to feel better. And so here's the thing too, is that if you have not recently created a human and you are constantly feeling anxious and you're constantly feeling down or whatever that is, that it is causing a problem in your day-to-day life, you deserve to feel better. And if you are sitting there hating yourself or wishing that you were just different, number one, you can't hate yourself into changing. Number two, you can feel differently. And I know that's like, people say that and it's really hard to believe. And I know that it's hard to believe because I felt that way a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And I will say that I am still struggling every day of my life, but I'm struggling different and it's easier now.
Yeah.
And when you live your life at a 10 of anxiety, moving it to an 8 is a remarkable difference.
I bet.
And once you move it a little bit, you start to believe that you can move it some more. And so I just want to remind everybody that Gwenna and I are huge advocates for therapy. It can be life-changing. It can be very difficult to access a therapist or find one that you really vibe with, but it is worth it.
Yeah.
And we just want all of you to be okay.
So let's take the last few minutes. Our timer's close-ish to going off. There's a little bit of time. Let's move away from the anxiety, the all-encompassing anxiety, the anxiety disorder type of anxiety. Let's talk about some of the ways that we as parents deal with perfectly reasonable anxieties that we're being overmuch with. What I mean by is risky play. I am horrified by the concept of risky play. I recognize its importance. I know
and we're talking like climbing crazy on the jungle
climbing
gym
crazy on trees
where your brain is screaming at you, my kid is going to fall and break their neck,
right.
Yeah.
So leaping off couches. Some parents do not have an issue with their child being an absolute whirling dervish of a human being throughout their entire house. I'm like, no, because that could lose you a fingernail and that's going to knock out a tooth. That's going to break your whole ass arm. That's an emergency room trip. That's calling the ambulance. That's a funeral.
I say my middle kiddo, I say she has no fear and it terrifies me.
Yeah, listen, he is my middle child. He is also my only boy. This has nothing to do with either of those identities. Who he is as a person will stress me out to the point that I get ulcers over this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just who he is as a person. The genetic material that I have added to him and the genetic material that my husband has added to him has perfect stormed into, you're going to be the reason mommy needs Tums. Okay.
Yeah. Feel some gray hairs coming in with you, kid. Yeah. So how do you handle it?
For risky play specifically, it's a cop out. I use my husband. My husband has a far better, I tap my support network.
Yeah.
My husband has a far better ability to go, yeah, he might break his wrist, but honestly, it's going to be a cast for a few weeks. And we are privileged enough to be able to afford that medical treatment in our country. It's not that big a deal. Do we want that to happen? No.
Which is also, I think, important too, is that I know that your husband isn't like, it's fine if he breaks his arm.
No.
It's to tell you, like, yeah, that is risky, but like, he's probably going to be fine. And if he does, it's going to be okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, yes, this is a risk. It absolutely is a risk, but it's the same risk. He has an equal chance of breaking his arm climbing up on that thing designed to be climbed on as he does every time you get in a car, and he could get a broken arm from a car wreck that wasn't your fault because somebody else impacted your vehicle. These risks are the same.
Vehicle.
You can accept the risk when you get in a car, but you can't accept the risk because you could see this happening in real time. Like, this is your brain. I'll take over. So is it a bit of a cop out? Yeah, a little bit. But it's also tapping my support network. I have a supportive partner who is better at assessing this. I am better at assessing illness. I can look at a child and go, that one's sick.
Yeah, literally. I could just look at their face. I'm like, you have a fever.
That one's sick. I don't even have to touch you. You're just, you're wrong. Come here. Let's find out how wrong it is.
Yeah. For me, I do okay with the risky play to a point, because I mean, you know me, I never shut up. So like my kids and I have talked about things. Yeah. But I like when my kids are taking risks carefully. And what I mean by that is not in a helicopter mom way where I'm yelling at them to be careful, because that's not going to help. That's actually probably going to make them anxious.
Yes.
Which is now going to put them at risk. And so instead we talk about like safety, you know, and boundaries and rules. And here's what could happen if you were to be this sort of wild, right?
Yeah.
And like when we go to the playground, like, oh, it says not to climb on these specific structures, so probably don't do that.
Yeah.
We're going to follow the rules and be respectful. But it is the taking risks carefully. And it cracks me up too, because my eldest was born careful and cautious and a little anxious. Like, that's just, you know, that's...
Did that apple detach from the tree, or is it still technically hanging on there?
Right. And it like cracks me up though, because, you know, I was like, oh, my kid is so careful and cautious. Like, I have clearly parented them so well. And then, you know, my middle kiddo was born and put me in my place. And so...
It's always the second one. The second one's always like, and, you thought.
And we go on walks a lot as a family. And a couple years ago, we're going on this walk, and my eldest is hanging back with me, and my little ones, whenever we go on walks, I play red light, green light with them, so they can run up ahead. But if they're getting kind of far, I'll go yellow light. That means you have to slow down. If it's red light, like, wait for me to catch up. And this is just how we do it. And we're going, and then I hear at one point my eldest, and we're on a straightaway. I can see my kids. There's no traffic. There's not like a stop sign coming up. I can see them. I'm fine with this distance. Because again, taking risks carefully. They're kind of separating, but we're close enough. But my eldest is like, hey, slow down. You're getting too far ahead. And I was like, I got it.
Whole parent right here, kiddo.
I don't need the help, but maybe we should talk about why that just stressed you out.
Yeah.
And I think that's like the funny thing too, is when you are seeing how the kids are reacting to each other doing the risky things. Like, don't do that. Be careful. And I'm like, I love that you care.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. My youngest daughter is definitely... She's way more cognizant of risk than the boy child is. The boy child has zero observational skills, which increases my anxiety about him making risky play choices, because his brain will never naturally stop and go, if I jump off this, what will happen? His brain is jump, no thoughts. No further thought. The word jump occurred to him. There were no questions following that. My daughter is just a little bit in advance of that developmental stage where she'll go, jump? Okay? Yeah. Like, she's got that extra little blip of, you need to double check. My son's like, no, verb.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a difference too, even with kids who are anxious, in how you're going to navigate that with them. Because one of my kids... It's just that supportive, do it scared.
Yeah.
It's okay. Like, do it anyway. In the other one, we're going to sit down. We're going to have a 20-minute conversation and we're going to work through every aspect of it. And, well, what do you think is going to happen? Well, I don't know. So maybe nothing's going to happen. Maybe we can do it. Maybe we could do it. We'll feel better. And so that's a thing that I've been saying to my kids recently, is if you listen to your anxiety is a liar. If you listen to your anxiety and you don't do this, if you don't do the thing, then you are telling your brain that you should be anxious about this.
Yeah.
But if you do it scared and everything is fine, now your anxiety is less strong. It's going to have a harder time holding on to this fear. And the more we do it, it's like a muscle, the more that we can prove it, right? But that's not going to work for everyone. That's not going to work for every kid. But it's been helping in our house.
We have been using, so my husband's mom, grandma, my husband's mom has what is probably to me the absolute perfect bead of that is risky and acceptable. I'm not going to intervene. This one I'm going to warn, and this one I'm going to outright prevent. So what we have started doing, because that is a tool in our family, is what we keep encouraging the boy when he's being told, all right, go off and do a thing in a place where you can make lots of risky decisions. Hey, would grandma let you do that? Because she has a fantastic, she's raised 3 boys, all of whom are just like my husband. Absolutely no risk assessment ever happened in their brains as children. Just like my son. She's got a great beat on it. So that is a tool that we have equipped for our kid. Would grandma let you do that?
Yeah.
No. Okay, then you probably shouldn't, bud. Would grandma let you do that? Yeah. Okay, off you go. And I just look away.
We have one of those like climbing dome things in our backyard. And, middle kiddo, no fear. The second that I finished it, she's at the top.
On top of it.
She's at the top. She's jumping off and I'm sitting there like, you're going to break something. And my youngest.
I don't want to go back to the emergency room.
my youngest is not as, she's not anxious. She's just a little bit more timid.
She's cautious.
Yeah, she's cautious. And, she kind of gets the Elvis legs, the shaky legs when she starts climbing. And
I've seen this child. I can see it.
yeah. And so when we first got it, like she was trying to climb up and she'd make it to like the second rung up. And then she'd say, Mom, can you help me get to the top? Can you help me get up there? And I said, no, because if you can't get up by yourself, you can't get down. And because of the way that this is shaped, I can't help you down. Because I can't like get into the middle and pick you up. Like it's not going to work. Yeah. So you just keep trying. And when you're ready, you'll get to the top. But I am not going to help you do something you're not ready to do. This is a thing. When you can climb all the way up, then I know you can climb all the way down. Like, that's important.
We have been doing the tree climbing, which I don't know why that makes me feel so, probably because everyone I've ever known to have broken a bone did so because of a tree somehow.
I got stuck in a tree once.
But we have a tree that I was like, I don't want the kids climbing the tree. And my husband, again, tapping my support system, my husband walked me out and he goes, how high can these children climb this tree? I was like, about there, which was not a whole lot higher where they could stand. Their feet would be about at my eye level. Any higher than that, and the branches, they couldn't even try to climb on them. They're just twiggy branches.
Yeah.
The part of the tree that will hold them is about eye level of where their feet would be. He goes, okay, so I want you to use your science brain. What are life-threatening injuries likely from a fall of this height? I was like, at their size and weight, no. They might break some of the smaller bones, not
No, it
some
doesn't
wind.
get a bruise. Yeah.
Concussion is a real thing. Like any head falling is a thing. Because but they're 6 and they already fall correctly. Correct. Like this is not. You are making this a bigger deal, and if you do not let them try to climb this tree, you will be the reason they can't climb trees. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. That's, I think it was hard. One thing that was hard for me, because I was also anxious at this point. So my kiddo learned how to ride a bike last year and things have been going great. We go for bike rides all the time. And this one day there's like this hill we go down, and at the bottom of the hill, there's a stop sign and the crossroad doesn't stop. And we'd been riding bikes for a while, right? And we were going down this hill and she's going fast and her foot slips And so she doesn't have her feet. And, you know, it's a kid bike.
It's the
So
back
it's the
pedal
back
brake,
pedal
yeah.
brake. And there's a car coming. And she panics, right? And I see her and she gets her feet back on and she slams it. And you could see, you know, like when you get the skid
skids.
marks.
Yeah.
And she stops and she falls and the bike rolls over her. She ran herself over with the bike, but she was fine. Right.
Yeah.
It was more scary than anything. Like she didn't even have any bumps or bruises. It was literally like she fell the right way.
Yeah.
And the bike just kind of kept going because physics. And it went over. She had like tire tracks on her knee and her arm. Like it was just the way it felt. But she wasn't hurt, but she was terrified. And I was terrified because there was nothing I could do. If I rode up, there was no way. You know, it was one of those everything slowed down. And I'm like, please sit. Like, but we had practiced everything. So she was okay. And then a couple days later, it was a beautiful day out. And I said, why don't we go for a bike ride?
Yeah.
And she was, I don't know. And I said, we're going to be okay. And I had to force myself to do it because I was scared, right? I mean, Jim got hit by a car when he was her age on his bike. So, and she was scared. But I said, if we don't get back into doing this, then we're both losing something we love to do together. And we did it. And we're good now. It was a little rocky, a shorter bike ride that first time back out, but we're good now. And that's part of it. That's part of handling anxiety, is telling yourself anxiety is lying. Just because something bad happened once doesn't mean every time is going to be bad.
That's our timer. That was a good way to end it. That wasn't in the middle of someone's sentence like it normally is. Disrespectful timer.
Yeah, that was good. Like a little pep talk for everybody.
All right, you're all horribly anxious bitches, but it's okay. We love you. All right, thank you for listening to. Dang it, I just cursed.
You did about 10 minutes ago, too. Like 5 minutes after you talked about not cursing.
Dang it. Thanks for listening to Childproof. We want to hear from you. Email us at whatever the hell our email address is. What is our email address?
childproofmail@gmail.com. Maybe in a year you'll remember it.
No.
What's going to happen first? Will you remember not to curse or our email first?
Oh,
that is the question.
Listen, the way I almost cursed at that.
Well, be sure to give us a follow on YouTube. We are Childproof Podcast. When we hit 10,000 subscribers there, we are going to post a mega blooper reel, and we mess up all the time, if you couldn't tell. And so
we've actually been not removing them as much. We leave more of it in there now.
We are 4,000 followers away on YouTube. And also we're thinking about doing some merch. So if you have t-shirts you would like to see, any ideas you have of what you would want to see, email us again. That is childproofmail@gmail.com.
And leave us a rating in all the places. Like, follow, subscribe, turn on notifications. Like, follow, subscribe on Spotify. All of the places that you can rate us, that helps us for technological reasons, algorithmic reasons. Yeah. Leave us a rating. We really do like reading them. And remember, sometimes our kids are the assholes.
And sometimes it's us, but it's usually my anxiety.
It's almost always your anxiety.
Yeah.
You anxiety for me.
I do.